Hello and welcome to another NHL DFS video here on the Stokastic DFS channel. I am Michael Clifford, aka Slim Cliffy, and I am going to go through how to use Fantasy Cruncher for NHL. So let's jump right into it. Here is Fantasy Cruncher. This is a 4-game slate that we're looking at. For those unfamiliar with Fantasy Cruncher, it's just the optimizer you use to create lineups quickly. So you don't have to do them by hand like we did 7 or 8 years ago. So this is the very front page that you'll get to whenever you load up Fantasy Cruncher. If you're a Stokastic member, the data will already be uploaded for you. So you see all the players playing tonight, the teams. You see the win percentage of their games. You see the team goal total. You can support or sort highest to lowest if you want. I usually just leave it sorted by salary. Everything from their starting lines, whether they're line 1, line 2. You see whether goalies are confirmed or not, all the way over, just scrolling over to projections here. My projections, of course, are the ones from Osmo, exposure, etc., etc. So it's fairly straightforward on the interface. This tab, these bars are where you'll do most of your work. The first tip, always make sure you have the right slate selected. There's only one slate here tonight that I can pick from over on DraftKings. It is a 4-game slate. But if you're playing on a Saturday afternoon or on a Saturday night, there could be multiple slates on various different sites, and it is a quick way to get some errors in your crunches if you don't have the right slate selected. So we have the slate selected. You can select or deselect teams if you want. Maybe you're playing on a 11-game slate and you want to make sure none of those pesky Arizona Coyotes get in your lineup. You can deselect a team. But here on a 4-game slate, we're going to leave every team selected. Advanced options will get much further into that. That's where all your settings will go. Upload data. This is if you want to upload your own projections. Just for an example, upload. I have projections for Osmo downloaded. So I'm just going to copy what I have in Excel and paste it over here. Player name and projections, upload projections. Green means good. If you have your own projections, that's the way you do it. And you can set each player's exposure and randomness if you want to in your own projections. I'm going to leave those alone for now. So that's where you upload your data. Late swap optimizer, we'll get that into in a second. Restore crunches in case you close things out and you have a crunch save that you want to jump back to. This is where you go and do it. You see, I've already done a few here today. I can go load up the ones that I want to go to, what contests are offered on DraftKings, etc., etc. The advanced options is where all your settings will go. This is where you decide how much of each player you want, how much they might be worth, how many players from each team, what stacks you want to use, so on and so forth. We'll start just right on the main page. Team salary. This could change depending on the slate. Maybe you're playing a 2-game slate and you want to get a bit different. So you'll set something like 47,000 for your min and 48,500 for your max. Now with the salary cap of 50,000, you're obviously leaving a lot of money on the table, but it'll give you a better chance at having some more unique lineups on a shorter slate. So where we're on a 4-game slate, I'm going to leave it at 49,150K, making sure we're no more than $1,000 out of range. Flex position, there is, of course, a utility flex spot for NHL DFS on DraftKings. I believe there are 2 over on FanDuel. So if you don't want a defenseman, you click out the defenseman. If you don't want a center, you click out the center. I usually don't put defenseman in my flex, so I'll unclick that. Offensive players versus your goalie. Especially over on DraftKings where goalies can rack up a save bonus. Having a player on a short slate against your goalie is not necessarily a bad idea. If you can get in on 1 or 2 goals scored and your goalie saves a lot of shots, your goalie can still be optimal, and then your player can still have a very good night. We'll set it to 0 right now. I usually don't have players going up against my goalie, but it is a way to get another way to get a unique lineup should you be playing on a short slate. Players from each team max. If you want to on DraftKings, you can play up to 6 players. For now, I'm going to put 4 from each team, no matter what. Players from every game. This is to ensure whether you do or don't game stack, i.e. Take 6 or 7 players from the same game. So if you only want maybe the most of 3 players from a game, you don't want players going up against each other, then you would put 3. I don't worry about that too much. If I get to a game stack, I get to a game stack, especially on a shorter slate. Again, it's one of those ways you can get different, and you can do that limiting opposing players as well. Your exposure settings are fairly important. Not super important, but they are calculated differently. So after each lineup is created or based on the number of lineups requested, let's say you're making 10 lineups and you have it capped at 30%, meaning you won't have more than 30% of any player on in your crunch. If you do it after each lineup is created, that means your first lineup, everybody is 100% owned. Because you have nobody can be over 30%. That means your second lineup will have a completely different set of players than your first one. Because obviously, if they can't be over 30%, it being in both lineups at 100% or 1 out of 2 lineups at 50%. So it would bring a whole new set of players, and it wouldn't be until your fourth lineup that you would go back to the original set of players and everything since to get a lineup of players that can be repeated, because at that point you'd be at 25% under that 30% threshold. If you do it based on the number of lineups requested, then they just spit them back at you up to 30%. Doesn't matter because you've already put in the rule that it's on the number of lineups requested and not after each lineup. So it kind of depends how you want Cruncher to spit everything back at you. We'll leave it based on the number of lineups requested as it is. Exposure for all players in the pool. We'll drop this down. It is a smaller slate, so going heavy on players is certainly not a big deal, but it's still hockey. There is a lot of variance from night to night. I know in basketball you might have 95% of a certain power forward or a certain center or what have you, because it is a much more reliable sport game to game. That's not really the case in NHL. If you want to go, there is a stacking, a way to stack your lineups that you go super heavy on 2 or 3 stacks, then maybe you do 90% or something like that. But we're going to leave ours at 50%. Now, randomness, I think, is something that a lot of people get wrong. Randomness isn't randomness of players. It's randomness of projection. So let's say we have a 20% randomness. What that means is that it will go up or down 20% from the projection, the median projection that we have for players. So let's say tonight we have Steven Stamkos projected for 10 points, and we use a 20% randomness. That means lineup to lineup, it will go up to 12 points or down to 8 points, and it'll just go through that through your crunch. And the reason that you do that is to kind of bring more players that could have upside into your lineup, but also in a variance-heavy sport like hockey, you don't want to rely on those top-end players producing high point totals every single night. It just doesn't happen. So maybe you want to use a higher randomness, like 30 or 40%. We'll just settle at 30%. And of course, thumbs up, thumbs down adjustment. Back on the main page here. Once you go to a player, you can click their thumbs up or thumbs down beside their name. Here on the main page, a thumbs up means plus 8% to the projection, 2 thumbs up, plus 16%, and so on and so forth. You can only do that up to 3 times. So if you want to change the adjustment, maybe you go 9, 10, 12, 15. I'm not going to do any thumbs up, but that is how it's done. Over on your position stacks, this is where you change what you want to do with your lineups and how the lineups come together. So you can create rules, which players are allowed to play with which players. And here I'm just going to go with a very simple one. So we're going to go with all centers must be paired with at least one player from the wing from the same team. Add that rule. Now, what that means is that when we stack our lines, maybe we have a power play stack and there are 3 wingers on the top power play unit. If you don't do that and you ask for a 3-player power play stack, it could very well give you 3 wingers in your lineup. This way, if you're doing a power play stack, it'll bring the center along with your wingers, ensuring that you get that position filled out, because it can be a lot tougher to fill out your center position depending on the slate. So we're going to make sure that our centers are paired with at least one winger. And the next tab over is the limit rule. So you limit what number of players you want in your lineup. For example, I don't like playing 2 defensemen from the same team in lineups. So I'm going to limit the number of D from the same team to 1 player. That means none of my lineups will give me 2 defensemen from the same team. Sometimes defensemen do project well together in the same game from the same team, and you don't want to do that. I'm just going to leave this for now just to kind of show how that limit rule works, but it's up to you how you want to do it. And of course, you can do it for all the rest of the positions. We're just going to leave this for now. And of course, this is the main page in your advanced options. This is where you're going to get all of your stacking done. Now, it's a 3-player stack. So my first stack is going to have 3 players in it. Exposure, 100%. That means I can get 100% of stack. I'm going to change that to 50%. I don't want more than 50% of any single stack. Now, this is a place where a lot of people get tripped up. It's this right here, allowing lines in stack, PP units allowed at the top here. The reason people can get tripped up is because, let's say we don't want the second lines and we don't want second power plays. We just want top lines and top power plays. But at 50%, which means we don't get more than a 50% stack. A lot of people can think that'll only give us 50% of a team. That's not the way it works. If you do that, it will give you up to 50% of the top line and up to 50% of the top power play. Those can often feature the same players, so you could end up with 85, 90, 100% of a player if you don't have the right ones checked. I usually just leave them as they are because I do this team by team. So I'm going to remove all teams here. I'm going to click Detroit. I want to play the Detroit top line, so I uncheck 2, uncheck power play 1, uncheck power play 2. I want the defenseman included, so I'm going to leave it there. If you just want a forward stack, you unclick it, obviously, but I want the defenseman. And then you can see the max and min projection, max and min salary, max and min value, max and min ownership available in a stack of these 5 players. And if you click the tab, it'll show you which players you have: Tyler Bertuzzi, Dylan Larkin, Moritz Seider, Lucas Raymond, Ben Sherratt. Those are the 5 guys that can go into a top line stack. Let's say you don't want Ben Sherratt in any of your lineups, or any of those stacks, you just unclick him, and then he won't be in. We'll leave Ben Sherratt in for now. Detroit at 50%. Let's say I want the Rangers top line at 50%. Same thing here. I'm going to allow defensemen, and we'll do the same thing with the Columbus top line. Now, obviously, at 50%, I'm not going to get 50% of each line because to quote the old Simpsons, you can't give more than 100%. But I'm just going to leave it up to Cruncher to decide what the best projected lines will be. So we have Columbus, Detroit, New York Rangers top line. Those are going to be our primary stacks. Add team to stack. This is where you can get your secondary stacks in. Now, if you want, you can do 2-man stack, 3-man stack, what you have you. We'll leave it as a 3-man stack for this demonstration. We'll do the same thing here. Limit to 50%. Remove all teams. Let's say I want to get the Montreal top line in. I want to get the Carolina second line in. And I want to get the Tampa Bay top line in. So now those 3 stacks will be in consideration for Fantasy Cruncher to be paired along with these 3 stacks. But of course, if I only allow 4 players per game, that means I'm not going to get Columbus, Tampa Bay stacks. I'm not going to get Montreal, Detroit stacks in the same lineup. So if you want to get game stacks, you have to change that back at the start. So we have all these teams selected that we want to use. The min and max ownership percentage available with the players in the stack. Of course, if you have the two lower end defensemen from Montreal and Josh Anderson, that's going to be a very low owned stack, but then you're leaving out the forwards, and it's probably not something you want to do. But it is a healthy little tool to show you just how low the ownership can go on the stack that you have selected. Moving on to groups. Groups is also very important, especially for correlating. Now, let's say I'm going to use Ville Husso. I'm going to name it Husso. Ville Husso, the goaltender for Detroit tonight. So I look up Husso in the list down here. Now, the first button is to add him to the group. The second is to make him the key player in that group. We're going to make him the key player. Now, what that means is that every time Ville Husso is added to our lineups, it'll bring up any player we have in that group with him. So let's say top defenseman Moritz Seider, we want him in that group, and secondary defenseman Filip Hronek, we want him in that group as well. That means every time Ville Husso is in my lineups, I'm going to get one of Moritz Seider and one of Filip Hronek. That's one way. It's a fast and easy way you can ensure that your goalies are correlated to your defensemen if you want to do that. And if you want to end up with some, remember we're stacking the Detroit top line. If you want to end up with some top line plus the goalie, then you go ahead and add Dylan Larkin. Now, you'll get some lineups with Dylan Larkin and Dylan Larkin's line and Ville Husso in net. We're going to do the same thing for Connor Hellebuyck here. So if Hellebuyck is added into a group, then we want to make sure we can bring along either Brendan Dillon or top power play defenseman Josh Morrissey. Make sure Hellebuck's keyed. And we're going to do the same thing for Andrei Vasilevsky. We'll just call it Vasil. So we go to we find Vasilevsky in our player pool. We key him. Then we say we have to bring along one of Victor Hedman, Mikhail Sergachev, Eric Chernak. So it'll bring along one of those three defensemen whenever we use Andrei Vasilevsky. If you want to use at most, if you want to bring along more players, you can click exactly 2 players from this group, and that means it'll bring in a double defenseman. Now, remember, we have a limit on 1 defenseman per team in our old limit rules. Remember over here. So that means it'll bring us an error, and we won't be able to do that whenever we bring in Andrei Vasilevsky. So we're going to leave it at least. We're going to use exactly 1 player from this group every time Vasilevsky is brought up. And it's a good way to ensure that if somebody's a third wheel on a line, you always bring along the center with them. Let's say tonight, Brandon Hagel's jumped to the top line for the Tampa Bay Lightning. We have the Tampa Bay top line as a possible stack. Remember, we have them over here as a possible stack. But we want to make sure every time Brandon Hagel is used in a line, he's got Braden Point along with him. So we find Brandon Hagel, we key him, and then we go and find Braden Point, and we add him to the group. So now every time Brandon Hagel gets into a lineup, Braden Point is coming along with him. So that's how you use your groups. I'm just going to delete that for right now to leave it just the goalies, easy enough. But that's how you can use your groups to make sure that you bring defensemen along with your goalies to try to get your goalies correlated into your stacks, or to make sure that your third wheels aren't being used with the other winger and a defenseman. Or if you don't have limit on defensemen, sometimes you'll get a third wheel and a double defenseman. Probably not the best stack to go with on most nights. So that's how you use all those things. Remember, we're at 50% exposure, 4 players max from each team. We're going to scroll down, crunch using stochastic projections, at least 20 lineups. So bam, there are the 20 lineups we are going to use. And, there's our very first one. There's our second line stack from Carolina with our top line stack along with Detroit. Sort by projected, because it'll show you your highest projected lineups. Fantasy Cruncher doesn't always spit back the highest projected lineups first. So you can see my number 7 projected, or my number 7 lineup is my top projected, which is why let's say you're playing 20 lineups tonight. Maybe you want to spit back 50 lineups. So you click 30 more teams, you go up to 50 lineups, you sort, back to order produced, and then back to projected. Now you see here the additional lineups that we brought in. Lineup 34, lineup 21, and lineup 31 are 3 of the 4 highest projected lineups we have in. So that's one secret I will tell people about Fantasy Cruncher, is that always make more lineups than you need. Unless you're really looking to get unique with your lineups. Maybe you're using less salary or something like that on a shorter slate. You generally want to have the highest projected lineups in your crunches, or in your DFS contest. So you go up to 50 lineups. You export the lineups, the 7 p.m. slate. We'll bring up. There's all the lineups that we made. We'll take the first 20 because we are doing this on a 10 game or on a 4 game slate, and we're entering the 20 max. We'll bring up. I'll bring up my DraftKings lineups here in just 1 second. Remember, if you're on DraftKings, you just go to lineups and edit entries. Make sure you have the right lineups selected, and you bring in. This is what I have for tonight. I'm just doing this for an example. So I entered everything into the quarter arcade. Those are the 20 lineups. Remember, we just did a crunch. These are the top 20. We're just going to paste here. Save. We're going to upload this. Upload the CSV to DraftKings, and all of my entries are now reflected. It's just that easy. I know sometimes I can stutter when I do these, but I really hope this has been a helpful video for people. If you're getting errors with Fantasy Cruncher, a lot of times or every time, it's just conflicting rules. So make sure, players against goalie, things like that. Make sure you have enough stacks for your exposures. Make sure you're not limiting number of players from each team to down too far or anything like that. That's how you can get a lot of errors. And it can be a little bit of a headache, but hopefully this has been helpful for anybody looking to get a little bit better with Fantasy Cruncher in their NHL DFS game. We will be having more videos throughout the season, obviously, for our DFS strategy shows. So head on over to Stokastic.com. Check out what we have for promos. Come join the NHL. It is a great time of the season right now. We're just getting underway. So good luck to everybody out there. Hopefully we can all win a little bit of money playing DraftKings or FanDuel or Yahoo this year using Fantasy Cruncher. And we'll see you on the ice.